In 1537, Spanish conquistador Gonzalo Jimenez de Quesada stood at the edge of Lake Guatavita and witnessed something that would launch the greatest treasure hunt in human history. What he saw wasn't a city of gold, but a ceremony so rich, so profound, it would be twisted by greed into a myth that would consume empires and drive men to madness. This is the true story of El Dorado. Before the Spanish arrived, the Muisca people of modern-day Colombia had a sacred tradition. When a new chief, or zipa, was chosen, he would prepare for his new role with a solemn ritual. Covered from head to toe in sticky resin and then dusted with pure gold until he shone like the sun itself. He was El Dorado, the gilded man. The new chief would be placed on a raft laden with gold and emerald offerings. As villagers watched from the shores, lighting bonfires and chanting, the raft was pushed to the center of the sacred lake Guatavita. There, as the sun rose over the Andes, the gilded chief would plunge into the water, washing the gold from his body, while his attendants cast the precious offerings into the lake's dark depths. It was an act of sacrifice, a spiritual offering to their gods, a renewal of their connection to the earth. But the conquistadors heard a different story. To them, this wasn't a sacred ritual. It was proof of something greater, a city where gold flowed like water and emeralds paved the streets. They didn't see a gilded man. They saw a golden king. They didn't see a sacred lake. They saw a treasure chest waiting to be opened. The story of El Dorado, the man, transformed into the legend of El Dorado, the lost city of gold. And with that transformation, a spiritual ceremony became a deadly obsession. The hunt began almost immediately. Driven by tales spun from captured natives, often under torture, the Spanish launched one catastrophic expedition after another. Francisco Pizarro, the conqueror of the Incas, having already seen unimaginable wealth, became fixated on this new, even greater prize. He sent his brother Gonzalo into the Amazon jungle with hundreds of conquistadors and thousands of native porters. They followed rumors and whispers, directions to a city that was always just beyond the next river, over the next mountain. What they found instead would haunt them forever. They found only starvation, disease, and hostile tribes. After 2 years of hell, a handful of emaciated survivors staggered back, their dreams of gold replaced with nightmares of the jungle. The obsession was not limited to the Spanish. In 1531, the German conquistador Ambrosius Anger marched into the jungle, driven by the same fever. His expedition was a brutal campaign of plunder and violence. He tortured local chiefs for information, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. But the jungle does not surrender its secrets easily. Ahinger was struck by a poison arrow and died a slow, agonizing death, another victim of the Golden Curse. Then came Diego de Ordaz, a veteran of Cortes' conquest of Mexico. He believed El Dorado lay deep within the Amazon basin. He sailed the treacherous Orinoco River, his men falling to disease and attacks. Convinced that with every bend in the river, he was closer to the prize, he never found the city. He died on the return voyage to Spain, his body cast into the very ocean he had crossed in search of fortune. The legend was a phantom, a mirage shimmering in the distance, always out of reach. But the map was a lie. There was no map. There were only stories, twisted and magnified by greed, leading men deeper into a world they did not understand. For every tale of a golden city, there was a real-world consequence of death and despair. The Amazon became a graveyard for European ambitions. Perhaps the most terrifying chapter in the hunt for El Dorado is the expedition of Pedro de Ursu and Lope de Aguirre in 1560. Ursu, a nobleman, set out with a large force to find the city. Among his men was a volatile, ambitious, and increasingly unhinged soldier named Lope de Aguirre. As the expedition struggled against the relentless jungle, Aguirre's paranoia and lust for power grew. He saw the quest not as a path to riches, but as a path to his own kingdom. Convinced that Ursu was leading them to their doom, Aguirre orchestrated a mutiny. He and his conspirators murdered Ursu in his hammock. But that was only the beginning of the bloodshed. Aguirre, now in command, declared himself Prince of Freedom and Wrath of God, renouncing his allegiance to the Spanish crown. He forced his men to sign a declaration of independence, effectively making them all outlaws. The search for El Dorado was abandoned. It was now a journey into pure insanity. Aguirre led his band of marauders down the Amazon River. He ruled through terror, executing anyone he suspected of disloyalty. His paranoia was boundless. He even murdered the nobleman who he had installed as a puppet leader after killing Ursu. He descended into a bloody rampage, attacking Spanish settlements along the coast of Venezuela. His own men lived in constant fear, trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape. The descent into madness was so complete that Aguirre eventually murdered his own daughter, claiming he was saving her from the shame of being the child of a traitor. Soon after, he was cornered by Spanish forces. Betrayed by his own terrified men, Aguirre was killed, his body dismembered and scattered as a warning. The man who sought a kingdom found only a gruesome end, a testament to the destructive power of the golden legend. The legend of El Dorado didn't just cost gold, it cost lives. Some men returned bankrupt. Others returned insane. Many never returned at all. Even the great Sir Walter Raleigh, the English courtier and explorer, fell victim to its allure. In the late 16th century, he led 2 expeditions to South America, convinced he could find the city and claim it for England. His first voyage yielded little but fantastic stories that captivated London. His second, years later, was a disaster. Defying the king's orders not to antagonize the Spanish, his men attacked a Spanish outpost. His own son was killed in the fighting. Raleigh returned to England empty-handed, only to be executed for treason. The dream of El Dorado had cost him his head. For centuries, treasure hunters tried to conquer Lake Guatavita itself. They attempted to drain it, to dredge it, to force it to give up its secrets. In the 1580s, one merchant managed to lower the water level significantly by cutting a notch in the crater's rim. He found some gold artifacts, but the notch collapsed, killing many workers, and the lake reclaimed its treasure. The lake had given up some of its gold, but not its secrets. So what was the truth? In the 20th century, archaeologists finally managed to drain the lake properly. They sifted through the mud and silt, the resting place of centuries of obsession. And what did they find? They found a handful of gold pieces, clay pots, and ceremonial items. There was no vast treasure, no king's ransom. The hoard that had launched 1,000 ships and claimed countless lives was a fiction. The immense wealth was an invention of the European imagination. El Dorado was never a city of gold. It was a ceremony of faith, twisted by greed into a curse that drove men to madness. The real treasure? It was never gold. It was the story itself. It still lures adventurers today. Because sometimes the greatest legends are the ones we create to justify our own destruction. The story of El Dorado teaches us that the most dangerous treasures are not the ones buried in the ground, but the ones we carry in our hearts. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more stories from the forgotten corners of our world.